guys, how you doing today? If you've been here before, you know who I am. If it's your first time stopping by, my name is Barb and this is Halfway to Sane, and we deal with true crime stories. Today is going to be about an inmate that was on death row, and also some things about like whether people think execution should still be used, or whether or not they should receive some other punishment. So I'm going to go ahead and start. And that being said, a Texas judge has set an October execution date for a man accused of killing his 2-year-old daughter. Now, that was October of 2024. His legal team, however, says the science used to convict him has been disproved. In 2003, a trial court used a shaken baby syndrome diagnosis to convict Robert Roberson, who is also autistic, of killing his daughter, Nikki. In the 2 decades since his conviction, Roberson has filed multiple appeals and compiled pages of evidence claiming that his daughter actually died from natural causes tied to her chronic illness. Roberson languishes on death row because Texas courts have ignored advancements in science and compelling new medical evidence not heard by the jury that proves his innocence. Roberson dropped out of high school and had some convictions for non-violent crimes. He had a job delivering newspapers in the small town of Palestine, Texas, when he gained custody of his 2-year-old daughter, Nikki, in the fall of 2001. Nikki was born to a woman experiencing homelessness in 1999 who had previously had 2 other children removed from her custody. She did not identify Nikki's father when Child Protective Services intervened, but Nikki's maternal grandparents voluntarily transferred the girl's custody to Roberson in November of 2001. Nikki suffered from chronic illness throughout her infancy, experiencing frequent infections and breathing apnea that would lead her to stop breathing, collapse, and turn blue. Roberson claims that when he gained custody of Nikki, he was not fully aware of her medical history, and the new father took Nikki to his home. Roberson took Nikki to the emergency room and pediatrician during the week of her death. Her doctor prescribed her Phenergan, which is a cough syrup that the Food and Drug Administration has subsequently labeled unsafe for young children with conditions like Nikki's because the medication can suppress breathing. Late on the night of January 31st, 2002, Roberson was woken up by a strange cry from Nikki, whom he found had fallen off his bed and onto the floor. After finding that nothing was seriously wrong with her, Roberson went back to sleep and later found the 2-year-old unconscious with blue lips. After rushing his daughter to the emergency room, medical staff found that Nikki had already undergone brain death from lack of oxygen. Suspecting child abuse, medics contacted law enforcement, and Roberson's legal team claims that medics presumed his guilt due to his unemotional behavior, which a response Roberson attributes to his autism spectrum disorder. On February 1st, 2002, a medical opinion determining that Nikki had died from shaken baby syndrome was used to arrest Roberson before an official autopsy had been performed. An autopsy a day later found that Nikki had died from blunt force head injury, which the medical examiner testified had resulted from a combination of shaking and blows. Roberson's legal team alleges that the examiners failed to properly review Nikki's medical history, and prosecutors presented evidence at trial that relied on a triad of shaken baby symptoms and bleeding under the dura membrane outside of the brain, and brain swelling and bleeding in the eyes that have never been proven to be caused by shaking. However, his girlfriend's daughter and a young niece said they had seen him shake Nikki and demonstrated the shaking on a teddy bear. Medical consensus now holds that shaking would result in skull fractures or broken bones, neither of which were found in Nikki's autopsy. Using this diagnostic triad, Roberson's trial featured a case from the prosecution that hinged on Roberson as physically abusive. Roberson's legal team also alleges that the prosecution featured testimony from a nurse who implied that Roberson had been sexually abusive to Nikki, which the Innocence Project called a highly prejudicial, because contemporary medical consensus around shaken baby symptoms was so strong. Roberson alleges that his trial lawyers were compelled to cede to the prosecution's theory instead of arguing for Roberson's innocence on the grounds that he lacked intent to kill. Later, at a hearing in the Texas House, a juror in the case pushed back on that account, saying that the prosecution had focused on shaking during the 2003 trial. The juror, Terry Compton, told legislators that if she had known at the time about the medical explanation for Nikki's death, she would not have voted to convict him. Roberson was found guilty of capital murder by a jury in February 2003. The trial court sentenced him to death, and capital murder is the most severe form of homicide involving specific aggravating circumstances that elevate it beyond a standard murder charge. Convictions for capital murder can result in life imprisonment without parole or the death penalty. Roberson appealed the decision and was denied, and he also submitted a writ of habeas corpus, which is a final avenue for convicted people to challenge the grounds of their convictions. The writ was denied in 2009, and in 2016, after Texas lawmakers passed a law that lets prisoners challenge their sentences on the basis that the science used to convict them has changed, so Roberson filed a new writ of habeas corpus. In the motion, Roberson claimed that new scientific evidence contradicted the shaken baby syndrome theory used to convict him, that the evidence used at trial was scientifically invalid, that he was innocent, and that the use of scientifically invalid evidence violated his right to a fair trial. Roberson's 2016 motion successfully granted him a stay of execution. His appeal was considered in an evidentiary hearing in 2021, in which the habeas court reviewed evidence and recommended that an appeals court deny relief on all four of Roberson's claims. Now, in January 2023, the appeals court followed the habeas corpus recommendations. Roberson tried to appeal to the Supreme Court, but the High Court declined to consider the case in October, and recently a judge set a new execution date for Roberson to be October 17, 2024, which again was this past October. Now the community pushes for Roberson's acquittal. In the 20 years since Roberson's initial conviction, the Innocence Project, prominent public figures, and members of Roberson's local community have spoken out against his treatment by the justice system. Brian Wharton, the former lead detective on Roberson's case, has expressed his confidence in Roberson's innocence and regrets the outcome of the 2003 trial at which he testified for the prosecution. So he changed his mind. He initially found Roberson guilty, but now he does not believe that that is the case. Now, Roberson currently has a motion pending consideration from the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. The motion filed in April suggests that in a different case heard before the Criminal Appeals Court, the state conceded that expert testimony on the shaken baby hypothesis, virtually identical to that used to convict Roberson, was non-credible. Both cases used testimony from the same child abuse expert. A petition posted to the Innocent Project's website titled "Stop the October 17th Execution of Robert Roberson, who is innocent," and the file gained nearly 13,000 signatures. According to the website, Roberson would be the first person to receive the death penalty due to shaken baby syndrome. When a Texas House committee launched a dramatic effort to stop death row inmate Robert Roberson's execution, it brought a long-running disagreement about his guilt out of the courtroom into the broader public arena. After several state and federal courts shut down his attempts to halt his execution, Roberson, who has maintained his innocence over 2 decades, was left with few options. The day before Roberson's October 17th execution was set to take place, the Texas House Committee on Criminal Jurisprudence held a hearing airing his claims of innocence and lack of due process. The panel's surprise move to subpoena Roberson on October 16th then successfully forced a delay in his execution. The campaign to win Roberson a new trial has led to fierce pushback from the Texas top Republicans on the same state GOP's rightmost flank, setting off a bitter political battle of competing narratives about Roberson's case. Roberson supporters, including some celebrities, say there is enough evidence supporting his innocence claim to warrant a new trial. The move was highly unusual, and the Texas Supreme Court ruled that the lawmakers had gone too far in using the subpoena to force the delay. Any new execution date would have to be set at least 91 days in advance, and the court said that the House members could call Mr. Roberson to testify in the meantime. Now, the lawmakers set the new hearing date for his testimony, but it was not yet clear if the Attorney General would try to prevent Roberson from appearing as he did in response to the October subpoena. But, more Americans now believe the death penalty, which is undergoing a years-long decline of use and support, is being administered unfairly, and finding that it is adding to its growing isolation in the United States. But whether the public's waning support for the death penalty and the declining number of executions and death sentences will ultimately result in the abolishment of capital punishment in the United States remains uncertain. There are some scholars who are optimistic the death penalty will be totally eradicated pretty soon. What's more likely is it's going to continue to decline. It is less likely that in the foreseeable future it'll totally disappear. In 2023, there were 24 executions in the United States. 21 people were sentenced to death in 2023, which was the 9th consecutive year where fewer than 30 people were executed and fewer than 50 received death sentences. Now, there's only 5 states that conducted executions this past year, 2024, and that was Texas, Florida, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Alabama. That was the lowest number in 20 years. Wow. That shows the death penalty is again becoming increasingly isolated in its use in the United States, and nearly 200 death row exonerations since 1975 also helped change people's minds. In recent years, various individuals across the country, including conservative legislators, have raised concerns about the death penalty or debated its future. If you commit a crime that is really heinous, like child rape, you should have the ultimate punishment. Ongoing difficulties by states in securing supplies of execution drugs have prompted some states to explore new and untested methods of execution or revive previously abandoned ones. Alabama has set a January execution date for what would be the nation's first attempt to execute an inmate with nitrogen gas. In July, Idaho became the 5th state to authorize executions by firing squad. The last time a U.S. inmate was executed by firing squad was in 2010. 29 states have either abolished the death penalty or paused executions. Texas, the nation's busiest capital punishment state, has not been immune to the ongoing debate over the death penalty. GOP state representatives said that in March, the bill was not part of a secret effort to do away with the death penalty in Texas. He stated he believes that in Texas, the death penalty is needed. He stated, "I am a supporter of the death penalty against executing people who at the time they commit the offense had a severe mental illness." In the death penalty in the United States follows a complex sentencing and trial process that reflects the gravity of the punishment involved. Eligibility criteria for the death penalty vary across jurisdictions, but often include factors such as the nature of the crime, the presence of aggravating circumstances, and sometimes the defendant's criminal history. The phases of a death penalty trial are meticulously structured, involving jury selection, presentation of evidence, and legal arguments. The guilt phase determines the defendant's culpability, while the penalty phase examines whether aggravating factors outweigh mitigating factors, ultimately deciding whether the death penalty is warranted. The historical evolution of execution methods in the United States traces a path from traditional means, such as hanging and firing squads, to more practices like lethal injection, electrocution, gas chambers, and in some cases, the use of the electric chair. Contemporary debates over execution methods revolve around concerns of botched executions, the availability of drugs for lethal injections, and the psychological toll on the executioners. Yeah, I would think that would take a toll on people, the ones that are in charge of doing the execution. You either have to have yourself very numb to the situation, or just block it out while it's happening. I don't know anybody who would look forward to doing something like that and not have issues afterwards. The death penalty process does not conclude with the trial and sentencing. Instead, it extends through a complex system of appeals designed to ensure the thorough examination of legal and factual issues. The overview of the appeals process for death row inmates involves multiple levels, including direct appeals and post-conviction proceedings. Governors or the president may grant clemency, reducing a death sentence to life imprisonment or halting an execution. This aspect introduces a humanitarian element as executive officials navigate the delicate balance between justice and mercy. Additionally, cases of wrongful convictions underscore the fallibility of the justice system. Innocent individuals sentenced to death, only later to be exonerated, bring into stark relief the potential for irreversible errors. Yeah, you can't change. Once you execute somebody, it's obviously done and over with. There's no redo. You have to make sure that the individual is guilty of their crime. And I don't know, you have to make sure that they're guilty. You have to make sure you have all the evidence. You have to include everything at trial. You can't be executing innocent people. Yes, there's people who claim to be innocent and they're not. But I think that number would be very low on death row. That's my belief. I don't know. What's your belief? You have any thoughts or comments on the situation? Do you believe the death penalty should be carried out, or do you think that people should just spend life in prison with no parole? I guess it's a delicate subject. It can be. People can argue certain situations. I don't know. I don't know if I believe that all states should punish criminals in the same manner or not. If you live in one state and they don't have the death penalty and you're just sentenced to life in prison. But then if you're in a different state, all of a sudden for your crime, you could be executed. I don't know. It's a tough subject, guys. It's a real tough subject. I do, however, believe an eye for an eye. That's me. That's my opinion. Especially, like they said, if it's involving a child of any type of sex abuse. You need to spend your life behind bars or be executed. I fully believe that. Children can't defend themselves to adults in that way. They can't. I don't know, guys. It's so difficult. It's so difficult, especially when it's involving children. You just can't ignore the situation, especially if they were brutally assaulted. Definitely life in prison or execution. Absolutely. Do me a favor. Leave your comments down below. Questions, other ideas of other stories, whatnot. Leave your comments down below. If you haven't already done so, could you please subscribe to my channel? It really helps me out. Hit the thumbs up building and that notification bell so you know the next time that I upload a video, you'll be notified. And until next time, guys, peace.